everyone. Thank you for joining us here today. I'm Sihiti from First Tech Challenge SLI Team Kodo Dragons. So we are a robotics team at Santa Clara High School. And today we're presenting to you all tips and tricks to ace science fair this year. So a quick introduction. Unfortunately, some of our members couldn't join us here today, but these are just some of the members of Team Kodo Dragons. So I'm Sahiti on the right side. So we're all part of FTC Team Kodo Dragons, like I mentioned earlier. I think someone might be trying to enter. Great. So so that's a little bit about who we are. Now, many of you might be actually wondering, what is FTC? And for that, this is a quick introduction. So we are a 9th grade rookie team of FTC, or First Tech Challenge Robotics, and we're a team supported by the STEM Leadership Institute, as many of you all are from. So there are 10 members in our team, and they are Aditi, Alex, Avik, Gari, Hanav, Isabel, Lasya, Riva, Ritvik, and Sahiti. So it's definitely a very large group. So it's definitely a very large group, and it's a lot of commitment, but it's also a lot of passion, and we truly enjoy doing things like this. So all of us have been in this SLI program since middle school, so we totally understand what you're all going through, whether it be for Synopsis Science Fair, eCyber Mission. I'm not sure if they're still doing it, but the Thomas Edison Pitch Contest. We understand all of these and have won various awards in them, so we're more than happy to help you. So before we start really quick, if you do have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat or raise your hand as needed. And we will send you a copy of these slides if you fill out the form provided at the end of the workshop. This was a form that you used to sign up, so we will just be giving you all the information through the email that you inserted here. So let's talk a little bit more about what exactly is FTC. And I know we've kind of touched upon this, but I want to explain a little bit more in depth, because when most of you come to 9th grade or start at high school at Santa Clara High, you will get FTC as one of the track options that you can choose. And it's definitely a really fun track, and it's definitely worth, I would say, all the work that you put in. So I just want to explain a little bit about it so that you guys can look into it. So FTC, like I mentioned earlier, stands for First Tech Challenge. So essentially, teams can build and program a robot using some of the metal parts that you can see on the right, and the bottom is actually 3D printed, the white part. And this robot is going to compete in 5 2.5-minute robot games with 3 other robots. So one of the robots is your alliance, and then the 2 other robots are your opponents. So a huge part of First is really doing a lot of outreach events and giving back to the community, both STEM and non-STEM. And something that you might have also seen used very, very often in First, whether you've done First LEGO League, First LEGO League Juniors, any sort of First event, is embodying First values, especially something called gracious professionalism. Gracious professionalism is giving out your best work while working well with your peers and community. And that's something that we really like to embody in our team, and that everyone that we recommend should embody, regardless if you participate in First. It is an important motive that you take into your science fair journey as well. So that's a little bit about FTC. Again, if you do have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat right now, or we can do a mute and unmute session towards the end. So now let's get started with the tips to ace science fair. So let's start with planning and time management. So we're now into December, so a lot of your competition tracks for the fall have been ending, and this is a great time to start working on science fair. So if you're in eCyber Mission, we recommend that you start working on your mission folder questions as soon as possible if you haven't already. And you do not want to save these till the last week. And similarly for Synopsis, we know a lot of you have submitted your project acceptances. However, this doesn't mean that you should be waiting for them in any way. And I know that the middle school teachers are also pushing you to get started on doing something. It could be researching. If you really need like human approval or something, then that is understandable, but do not just stand there waiting, and because you will lose a lot of time. And you can feel free to make iteration as the projects progress. So even for us, for Synopsis last year, we did make edits as we went on, and we just email the judges if they were major, or you can just make the minor ones yourselves if they don't pose a big change to your project. So feel free to make those iterations. Don't feel like you have to stick to your original idea. because oftentimes and not, you will see it's part of the engineering design process that you're constantly iterating and making your idea better. And something that's really important is to journal at the end of every meeting because you will not remember what you did a month later. And I know this is probably the part that most of us hate about doing this sort of project. And I can speak from firsthand experience, but the journal is where you can see how much you've progressed and how much you've really done. And also, it's great to reflect back upon like what was your timeline, what exactly you did. If there was something you figured out a few weeks ago that you want to look back on, the journal has all of that. So make sure that you are updating that journal accordingly. And we really recommend that you aim to complete your project as well as the testing at least a few weeks before your deadline. Because while this is your aim, oftentimes than not, things are going to go wrong and you're going to need more time. So this, even if you do end up things go surprisingly well, it does make sense to have some time to iterate your prototype or to iterate your project if you're doing a science project. And then you want to conduct more tests. You want to really be able to do all of this, which will come with trying to finish your project a little bit earlier than the actual due date. So now a little bit more about time management. You also want to have some sort of task or time manager. I know in middle school they really recommend using a Gantt chart or some sort of way to assign tasks to each other. Some other links that we've used, especially as we've gotten into high school, are ClickUp, Notion, Taskade, When to Meet. All of these are resources that are available for you. They're available on the web, so make sure that you're using them and that you're taking the best advantage of these things. If you are doing a programming project, make sure that you have a flowchart for your software, as well as the overall device. And you want to make this as detailed as possible. And I think someone else was trying to yeah. So you do want to make sure that you have that because it makes a lot of sense, especially to judges or someone who may not understand programming completely. Just looking at that flowchart and kind of it all clicking in, it will be very useful. And it's something that you would want to include on your final as well. And we really do recommend having some sort of group messaging platform that all members actively check. So some people are really active in Google Chat, some people messages, Discord, whatever works best with you. Make sure you're using that, and this will really make sure that everyone's on the same page and that not a lot of meetings are being missed. And you also want to set goals for each meeting. So don't just go into the meeting thinking, oh, I'm just going to do whatever today. You really want to make sure that those goals are set and that you have specific due dates that you're giving yourself, even if SLI might not be providing them to you, because those little things, it's a very long-term project and you want to make sure that you're not missing those little deadlines and having to cram through it at the end. So this is an example flowchart from one of our team members. And this is what kind of your software flowchart should be like. So they just did a little bit extra, and they also talked about what determines their success and failure. However, this isn't exactly needed if you're trying to do a sort of flowchart. It is something to think about and to explain to the judges. So I'm not sure if you guys have covered this yet in class, but the different shapes will represent different things. The diamonds represent decisions and so on. So you want to make sure that these are all being taken into account. It's easily understandable. You don't want a flowchart with so many arrows and it's so confusing that you can barely read it yourself. So something like this where it's colorful, it makes sense, it's short but very full of information, and it only covers like the main parts but the important parts and the necessary parts of your project. So I can give everyone a chance to look and read through this for like a moment, and then we can move on to the next slide. I guess I can move on to the next slide then. So now we're talking about resources. You guys have been provided with a bunch of resources, including this amazing program as well. So make sure that you're talking to SLI teachers, other students who may have done similar projects to you in the past years, program managers, they're all here to help you. And don't be afraid to ask for additional materials, because if the STEM Lab has them, they're likely to give it to you. They don't want to keep them for themselves. So don't feel afraid to ask them, even if mid-December or in early January you're like, oh, I didn't realize I needed this. And you guys are also getting SLC mentors that are checking in with you periodically. So you want to use them, and they're here to help. So they're here to mentor you, and they enjoy doing it. So make sure that you're using them. They have so much knowledge to provide with you, and I think last year, so many of us even used this just to be successful. So it's really important that you're taking into account this mentorship that you're being provided. If you do have any other questions about any of the competitions, any of the hardware, software, anything, you can feel free to also email us, CoderDragons, at coderdragonsftc@gmail.com. That's the email that you got the link to for today's program. So you can feel free to check in on that as well. In terms of the internet, that is a great resource, but you also want to make sure that you're looking at reliable resources. So when you're doing your research, you do want to make sure that you're looking at government websites, organizations, websites that have reliable information. But sometimes when you're doing your actual project, even looking at someone who made an Arduino soil moisture sensor detection thing at home can help you create your own project. So just looking at hardware manufacturers' websites, they'll often provide a lot of information on what they provide and what it does. YouTube, simple Google searches, anything can be a resource in terms of the internet. And similarly, you do want to look at some of the past projects. It could be on web pages, you're seeing how people have done something similar, also kind of into that, looking at someone doing their passion project on Arduino. In person, if you have any friends, any family, any teachers, SLC members, anyone who has done similar projects, you can use them and they're here to help you most of the time. Videos like the ones you can find on YouTube. Some people publish like their Thomas Edison video pitch contest videos to YouTube and for others to see. So you can use all of those to help yourself with this project. The next section we're going to be talking about is the research plan and engineering journal. So this research plan that we're talking about is not the synopsis research plan, but the research plan that you're doing for SLI. So some people choose to combine these two, their research plan and their engineering journal. Some people choose to keep them separate. And it's really your option. And we'll show you an example part of our research plan on the next slide. So if you're a little bit confused on that might help. But you just want to make sure that your research plan is clear and concise. So at the same time, it needs to make sense, but it also can't be so long that you feel like the reader feels like they're just having to look through like tons and tons of text. And adding on to that, you do want to include images. It's super helpful when talking about the data and the background research. So analyzing your data through like bar graphs and line charts and stuff like that can be very useful. And similarly, just including images of your problem or the research that you've conducted can really help with the background research. And going a little bit more into that, you want to know, why is this question or problem, like why do you want to solve it? Why do you want to explore it? Is it something like, I think humans advancement can improve because of this? Is it personal experience? I personally felt like this is a problem in my life. Or is this a passion project? I really had a passion for this field and that's why I want to do this project. Make sure that that's clear. Even you want to just make sure that it's clear all throughout that you're doing this because it's really something that you enjoy doing. And that's also something that judges really want to see. And your teachers want to see. They all want to see that you're actually enjoying this and that you're not like feeling pushed into doing it. And you want to make sure that you never leave the research plan or journal for the end, because the work will build up and it will be very stressful trying to finish it the night before. Trust me, I've been there. And make sure to keep a journal and record of what was done in every meeting. So kind of talking about what we were saying earlier, keep at least 10 minutes at the end of every meeting to complete this. And feel free to record all of your errors and iterations. Because like I said, no project is going to be perfect and there are going to be iterations. So just letting judges know that, or at least the readers of your engineering journal know that, can be very useful. So make sure that you include all of that in your research plan and engineering journal. So this is the research plan and journal examples of a team that went to Broadcom Masters. So you can see that they have who's here, what they did, what they researched in their sources. They have images. Let me use my. They have an image, they have some notes, and they have some future goals. So you can see that this was well structured. They thought about what they want to do before doing it, and then planned it out accordingly. So this is their journal, and then this is their research plan itself. So you can see that they talked about the building procedure, their CAD design, and then what they did accordingly. So it's not too much text compared to the images. It's actually pretty equal. So just as many images as there is text, descriptions of the words. I don't know if all of you have been introduced to the acronym TADA yet, and the acronym USTA, but just make sure that all of your images have a title, arrows, details, angles, all of that, and also make sure that your graphs have units, scales, titles, and axes because those will make them so much easier to read and a lot more enjoyable for the judges. So these are just examples to keep note of. This project was more relating to farming and vertical farming, so you can see that their theme was mostly green, and they planned out their project accordingly. But of course, yours is going to be a little bit different, so don't feel like you have to exactly copy these. They're just examples and inspiration to look into. So now let's talk about the judging. And similar to what we've kind of been saying earlier, you want to keep this concise yet informative too. You don't have that much time to talk to the judges, and especially if you're, I think it's East Cyber Mission Regionals and then Synopsis, the qualifier as well, you don't really have that much time to talk to judges. Sometimes they'll just be walking around. And this is the first time in 3 years that they've been doing it in person. So even us as freshmen, we've never been to this in-person fair. So it's going to be kind of new for all of us. But it is important that whatever you do, your board, your slides, however you're planning on presenting your project as needed for your fair, that they're in contrasting and easy to read colors. So you don't want to put like a very, very dark red on a lighter red. That would be extremely hard to read. You want to make sure that there is that contrast. So if you're having a light background, you want dark text. Similarly, if you're having a dark background, you want lighter text. And you want to show enthusiasm. So you want to show that you're actually passionate about it. And that's why I said that you should make it clear, why am I doing this project? So what is pushing me into doing this project? And know everything about the project. So sometimes we do assign duties to each other. We'd be like, oh, one person focused majorly on this aspect of the project, someone focused on the other aspect, someone focused on the researching. It may be like that, but make sure that everyone has basic understandings of the entire project, because judges, they probably and they likely will single you out and ask a particular person that question. And so it's important at least to be able to give that vague answer so that they can kind of understand that you know a part of it and that everyone is able to answer questions, which kind of moves on to our next point, which is that everyone should be answering questions. And so don't just stay quiet, because that's especially when judges start picking on people and you may not know the answer to what they picked on. And similarly, if someone says something about your project, don't directly contradict it, because sometimes people might forget some certain points, or they just might miss out on something that they didn't know about. And contradicting it will just make it seem like you're not on the same page, or that there's some sort of confusion going on, and takes away from the from how real, I don't know how to explain this. So basically, it takes away from how liable your project is. Almost like it seems less trustworthy. And you want to make sure that you dress for the occasions, especially if you're going to one of these in-person project presentations. So something formal, not just something that you wear every day to school, because you want to seem like this is actually something that you care about and that's something that you want to do. And prior to the competition, you will be presenting these in classrooms. So make sure that you're taking the teacher feedback that you get. It will definitely be useful in your final judging. And similarly, even if the judges give you feedback, which they likely will, use that as improvement. Sometimes they give a lot of constructive criticism, and even if you aren't able to use it this year, you can still use it next year. And it's not like the end of the world if you don't move on to the next level, or if you don't win an award, because you're still gaining so much knowledge that you're going to definitely use at some point in your life, whether it be learning to work in a team or actually just learning the hardware stuff or software. Whatever you learn, I promise you that it will be useful in the future. So does anyone have any questions? I know we got some before the session started, and then I think there was also people in the chat. So I see Ricky asked, would you recommend keeping them separate or combining them? I think you're talking about the engineering journal and then the research plan. Personally, in the groups that I've been in, we've kept them separate just because that was easier for us to work with than having to scroll through a large document. But anything is fine as long as it's clear that they're different. I wouldn't say though to just keep your journal and like include little sections into that. So actually make a defining line between, like, start off with your research plan and then below add your journal entries, something like that, where the judges see the main research plan first and then they can look in depth if you do plan to do something like that. So you guys can continue to put your questions in the chat. Let me look at some of the questions that we got beforehand, and you can also feel free to raise your hand if you'd like to unmute. Okay, so I think the first question was how to speak confidently while speaking in an open forum. By open forum, if you're talking about like an online website or something like that, if you really aren't comfortable with letting your opinion out, you can always go anonymous. And especially it's websites like Reddit, which are full of information, by the way. If you really don't feel like you're comfortable with doing that, then you can feel free to do otherwise. And then someone else asks, will the science fair be in person in 2023? I believe eCyber Mission is virtual and Synopsis Science Fair is in person. So, for any changes in the judging or format after COVID, there are some changes, and I think they did put them on their website. Let me go ahead and send that link in the chat. So yeah, I just put that in the chat. The next question was how to approach the presentation of a product. Hopefully we cover that in the session, but if you still do have any questions about that, do let us know. How do you see your progress on the website? I'm having trouble accessing that or knowing where to look. Actually, I haven't done eCyber Mission, so I'm not completely sure about that. But for Synopsis, I can put where you can find the project status in the chat. So this is where you can find your project status. So just go under your teacher's name, and then you can see if it's been accepted, if it's under review, if there's any problems with it, and so on. Then the next question was, do you see your progress on the website? Oh, I can do this. Okay. Have you ever had any miscommunications or arguments with each other? If you did, how did you resolve it? So yes, miscommunications are always present. Thankfully, at least in the groups that I've worked in for science fair, there haven't been like arguments especially. But I think that was actually really good because we were all able to just maturely talk about why we felt the way we did. For example, if there was something that we wanted to all do differently, we talked about why we wanted to do it, what we thought were the pros and cons, and then we were able to decide as a group what worked best for us. So thankfully, we haven't had too much of a miscommunication or arguments, and that's also where I think something like some sort of chat for all of you to talk together is useful. So that if there is some sort of thing that you want to communicate, you can communicate it quickly and efficiently without having to wait to see each other at school the next day. And then would I be able to share the slides in Google Classroom? Unfortunately, I don't have access to your Google Classrooms, but I will send an email to everyone who signed up with the slideshow, and then you guys can also email us with any other questions. And then Sarvesh has a question. Maybe Lassia can help answer this one as well. But it says, in our project, we are extracting water from the air using evaporator coils. They take vapor refrigerant and flow it through copper tubes while making cold. This allows the ceiling inside the booth to become cold, which allows human air to go onto it and collect water. However, since we can't get liquid refrigerants, we have to use dry ice, which only lasts for 24 hours. But if we use condenser coils, we take the refrigerant from the evaporator coil and reuse it to make the cycle continue. The downside, it becomes much more complex because it includes Arduino and it becomes bulkier. Should we use evaporator or condenser coils? So I can put the chat, the thing in the chat as well.
Okay, is Sarvesh here to clarify Sudhi's question? So for condenser coils, like just adding on if you are here, can you use dry ice? Because you said you need to use dry ice. So if you can use condenser coils seem better from what you wrote. So you can reuse it and make the cycle continue. However, if it is dry ice and it only lasts 24 hours, I don't think it makes too much sense to use condenser coils because the cycle cannot continue for that long. So in that case, you can just use evaporator coils. But I think it depends on what medium you're using. If you get the refrigerant, then I guess you can use the condenser coils. If not, I think you can just use the evaporator coils.
And let us know if you have any other questions. And then someone asked, what does TDA and USTA stand for? I can put it in the chat because I know I kind of went through that quickly. So TDA stands for Title, Angles, Details. And it's a concept that you'll definitely get familiar with by the end of middle school. So
yeah, and use it especially because Miss Shalingo loves it. Like she loves it. So you should use it in a lot of your slideshows, like presentations, even your research journal, anything you're using, use it for all pictures, TDA especially. And just make sure that it's very clear though. So you don't want to write bulks of paragraphs. So just write like captions and enough for everyone to understand what your pictures represent.
USTA can be used for data, like for showing your data on data visualization. So when you're trying to look for patterns in your data, you want to make sure that you're USTA. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I will look through if we have another more.
So for TDA, angles means in the picture, like pretend you're showing like a picture of your science fair project. So you want to show it in multiple angles. So you want a picture from the front, from the top, from the side, so you can give the person who's reading your journal or research plan a full view of what your project was.
If you guys have any questions about like FTC or robotics as well, feel free to ask them. We're here to answer them.
So if there aren't any questions, I guess we can end this meeting. And if you guys have any questions, please email us at codadragonsftc@gmail.com. So anything you want to add, Suthi?
Oh yeah, I was going to say, I will send we will send the slides through the same email, codadragonsftc@gmail.com once again. And so please do feel free to reach out to us, email us. We all want to help out, and we hope you guys have the best science fair journey this year with a lot of learning, definitely.
Yeah, and good luck. So thank you so much for attending, and you guys can log off now.
Thank you.
Thank you.